Solution Workshop. My name is Davida. I'm an addict.
Thank you.
Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. If anyone here represents a media agency, please contact Mark N. The members of the North Central Indiana area of Narcotics Anonymous welcome you to the 3rd annual We Grow with Love convention. We would like to thank you for joining us in this celebration of recovery. We are deeply grateful to Narcotics Anonymous and find great joy in being able to express our gratitude here with you, our family. In Narcotics Anonymous, we are certain that when we come together to share our lives and our love with each other, a miracle happens. Our recovery takes hard work, courage, and commitment. Those are the things that carry us through as we seek the spiritual growth that comes from working the 12 steps. Never alone, we do this together and for each other, knowing that we need each other because more than anything else, we grow with love. The preface to the basic text begins, "The full fruit of our labor of love lives in the harvest, and that always comes in its right season. For us, our season has come." Would someone please read just for today?
Hi, I'm Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Just for today, my thoughts will be on my recovery, living and enjoying life without the use of drugs. Just for today, I will have faith in someone in NA who believes in me and wants to help me in my recovery. Just for today, I will have a program. I will try to follow it to the best of my ability. Just for today, through NA, I will try to get a better perspective on my life. Just for today, I will be unafraid. My thoughts will be on my new association, people who are not using and who have found a new way of life. So long as I follow that way, I have nothing to fear.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon.
At this time, I'd like to introduce the main speaker, John Kay from Detroit. He's a veteran of this convention, and I've got to know him in the last couple of years, and he's a really great guy. John?
Thanks. Hi, I'm an addict. My name's John.
Hey, John.
That's kind of strange to be called a veteran in recovery, and I'm really honored to be part of this convention for the 3rd year in a row. When I got this Living in the Solution as the workshop that I'd be part of, it was a perfect day for it because I had an up and down day all throughout my day, and I just dealt with it. And when I looked at this, I said, well, how much homework do I have to do a workshop? And as an addict, I took it apart, and I thought, well, I don't have to do anything, because if after being around here for 3 years, I'm not living in the solution, something's wrong. And I look back on when I was living in the problem, because today, everything's either right or wrong, honest or dishonest, and I always look at from one opposite to the other now. And today I live in the solution, I think one of the biggest lines I remember my father using when I was growing up, and still today, when I'd come by, he'd say, "What's the problem?" Because he was so used to me coming to him with problems. I need some money, and I need this, and this big story, which was always a lie, to get some money. He just got so accustomed to me running something on him that even still today, I'll walk up to him and he'll say, "What's the problem?" And I used to tell him what the problem was, but as I got into recovery, this was my line to him. "No, Dad, what's the solution? That's the whole deal. What's the solution?" And I use that in recovery. I use that with the guys I sponsor. They'll tell me about the problem, and I'll shoot it right back at them. "What's the solution? You tell me what the solution is to it in your version, and I'll tell you what I think." And together we'll figure it out. And I have some good times with these guys I sponsor, because they'll tell me all about their family and how the family drives them crazy, how their mother and their father drive them crazy, and they're so-called normal. And I said, well, isn't it wonderful that we're both addicts and we can relate to how they drive us crazy, and they're normal. They're not using drugs, they're just sporadic and wanting this done and that done. A lot has happened to me in the last year. Last year when I was here, I was in the first parts of a relationship, and now I'm engaged to be married to this woman, and she has 3 little girls, and these 3 little girls have taught me so much about what the solution is, because their ages are from 2 to 7, and I've learned that all 3 of them have their own little personalities. They all have big time feelings that they haven't numbed out yet like I did, and they're teaching me how to feel and how to act, and how I react. They keep me in check with my character defects every day. If I have a bad day and I want to lash out at them, I'm making amends to these little girls, and they make them to me. And it's really a nice way to learn recovery. I feel kind of guilty because all this week I hadn't been to a meeting, and I justified it saying, well, I'm going to a convention, so I don't need a meeting. And my sponsor's here, and I spent more time with him today than I have with him in a few weeks, which is real abnormal and real scary. We talked about how when we get in here, our foundation, how we build it, and the pattern we get into, because we are creatures of habit. We all know that word habit, and I've gotten out of that habit of going to meetings and working with the newcomer, because still today, living in the solution for me is to carry the message to the suffering addict, the newcomers. The newcomers have taught me every meeting I've went to. They've built my self-esteem by leaning on me, and they've kept me from thoughts of using by just seeing them, just seeing them the same way people saw me when I first came around here, beaten up, didn't know which way to turn, didn't know what the solution was. I still remember it like it was yesterday, when that whole thing is that you're an addict and you have a disease. I was ecstatic. That's all I got, a disease, because I thought I would die in the insanity in my mind when I came around here. I didn't know any way out. I thought, I was a junkie and I would die a junkie. And I know that's a lie today. Living in the solution for me is all around me. I'm surrounded by people in recovery. I run my own business, and I had a previous sponsor that I saw this week, and we were talking about my dreams and my expectations when I first came around here as far as my life. I didn't want to work for anybody anymore. I kept quitting jobs because they affected my recovery. My bosses either drank, or the guys on the, I do construction work and home improvement, and the crews were using. They'd take a break to smoke a joint. They'd all be at the bar after work or at lunchtime. And I couldn't handle that, and I kept quitting jobs. And people go, aren't you worried about, where your next dollar's going to come from? And I'd say, no, it's not about the money. And still today, it's not about the money. I probably make more money now than I ever have in my life. And I don't let that affect me, like drugs affected me, like relationships affect people. I try to keep a balance. That's a solution for me, not to let things change me from what I really want to be. And I'm constantly trying to figure out solutions for people. They call me to do home repairs, and I have to figure out a solution for them, where there's priorities. Do they want to keep this home or sell this home? And I'm doing some things that I never thought were possible. I took tests to get my builder's license, and went back to school and flunked the test, and my self-esteem was gone. I thought I'm a loser, So I went back to school and I took the test again, and then the dreaded question of, do you have a felony record? Do you have a felony conviction? And I thought, well, I should lie about this because I don't have just a felony conviction. My record is as long as my leg. But I got honest. And I wrote down everything that was there, and they had another question about a rehab, and I've been to one rehab. And the only reason I went was because of a parole officer. I was never one to check myself into a hospital or a rehab. And I only went there because it was a way out. And I completed this program so I could put that on the application. It was a plus for me today, and I didn't have a clue as to why that was working in my life or where that would fit in. A lot of things that I do in recovery, I do them just in pure faith because I know somewhere down the line it's going to pay off. And I figured, well, if I'm going to put this much to the Department of Commerce in Lansing, Michigan, then I might as well get honest with them and tell them that I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous, and I told them about that and how a little bit about my clean time, and I signed it, and I had my fiance look at it. She said, "Do you really want to tell them this stuff?" I said, "Yeah, of course. I'm proud of this. This is something I'm finally proud of in my life." And for 2 weeks I sweated it out, thinking, "My God, they're never going to do this. They're going to send me back something saying you're the worst person in the world. I can't believe that you want to, have a license this way." And on the 22nd, I got the certificate. I'm a licensed builder now, and I was ecstatic, running around all, beaming. And I saw my first sponsor, and I told him that, and he said, "See, this dream that you had 2.5 years ago is coming true little by little. You've done the footwork, just like I've done the footwork in recovery. Worked on this foundation, and conventions are a big part of my recovery. And the solution is to do what these people around here tell me to do. What you tell me to do. I was so closed-minded and so hateful when I came around here, and now I try to be so loving. And if somebody tells me to do something, and it's something I don't want to do, I still do it. Do a workshop. Chair a meeting. Go to a meeting. And I love it all. I love NA. It's saved my life. It's given me a life. And the solution is real simple for me. It's just to do what these people around here are doing. And I'm amazed. I'm totally amazed. I watched my fiance get her year clean. I watched her fight for her children, and get them back through the courts. And as I read the newspaper about children being taken from their parents for abuse and for drug-related things, I'm thinking, why couldn't she be in there? And as a good story, because she fought hard for 3 or 4 years through the courts, and I watched her get those kids back, and that was something. On Mother's Day, I bought her a 10-speed with a little carrier for the baby, and I watched them go on a little bike ride, and I was crying, I was just so happy to see someone that anybody saw, they would think, well, that's not an addict. This isn't a woman who used to use with her children. This is an everyday woman who's enjoying her kids, and she came back about a half hour later and said, "I was all choked up and crying when I was driving that bike, riding that bike around, and I'm sure she was just when I was too, and it's things like that make this solution work, These are the little gifts, being able to take a walk by the lake, and not have to worry, And we were smoking a cigarette outside, and someone threw a butt on the ground and picked it up, and I said, I can do that today, because I remember there was a time when that's all I had was the cigarette butts off the ground, and not a nickel to my name, and not a clue as to where to go and what to do. Today I have a pretty good basis on what to do, and I'm a responsible member of society, and it scares me today sometimes, but I don't have to run and tell my customers that. I can come into the tables and say, listen, I don't know what to do here, give me some insight. And I've got thousands of people in the fellowship to give me insight on what to do, and so many people with their hands out to help me. It's a real warm feeling, For me, the solution's NA, and I'll never turn my back on this fellowship. I don't ever want to be considered not a part of, when they call, I go, and that's the solution for me today. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, John. I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Michael W. from Fort Wayne.
I'm an addict named Michael.
Michael.
Hi, family. First of all, I want to give thanks to my higher power, for whom I choose to call God, for allowing me to make it to this convention and to be able to share honestly. I, like him too, you know, I lived in the problem for so long I didn't know what a solution was until I was introduced to the program of Narcotics Anonymous. And ironically, that was in 1982. And I didn't make it back here until 1992, 10 years. So I have to know that there was a solution back in 82 because a seed was planted for me, you know, and I chose to do something else. I made other decisions. I lived in a problem so long. I mean, you know, you got to understand that where I come from, it was like, you know, everything was a problem. I was the problem child, you know. I was a problem kid in school, you know. I was a problem for everything. And in order for me to really understand myself, they sent me to see psychiatrists, you know. I went to go see shrinks, and they gave me medication and lithium and, you know, things like that. And it was like my problem, you know, if I go back and look at it, I was an addict back then before I even picked up, you know. You know, I had obsessive and compulsive behavior back then, you know. So I really ran wild when I got a taste of my first drug, which was alcohol, you know. And I fell in love with it. I mean, I can't think of too many things I didn't obsess and compulse about, you know, coming up through the ranks, you know, until I fully gave myself to the program of Narcotics Anonymous. And I mean fully, because I had ran out of things to do in my life, to where, I mean, I had been in jails and institutions and almost died a few times, that, you know, I had to believe my higher power had different plans for me, see. You know, I didn't get here by myself. You know, I think he walked me through the door. And therefore, the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous embraced me. And they gave me something that I longed for, you know, to be a part of, see. See, I didn't have that coming up, being a part of. I was always the exception. I wanted to stick out, you know. And I didn't know a lot of things. And these people loved me until I could love myself, see. You know, you people loved me until I could love myself. You know, being here is truly a blessing for me, because I had an opportunity to go to New York instead of come to We Grow with Love 3, and this is the first time I've been here, you know, and I've been to all the Rhinestone conventions, and other addicts, and I'll tell you how God worked. Other addicts had shared with me that this was such a serene place, you know, and throughout the recovery process for me, I've always been in the hustle bustle conventions, and for me to just drive up here, I automatically knew that this was a serene place, you know. It wasn't big, and I didn't get lost. You know what I mean? I usually get lost at the convention. I don't know about y'all. You know, and I try to make everything. By the time I leave, I'm so burnt out, I ain't got enough time to do nothing but sleep when I get home. You know? It's so peaceful and quiet here. You know, so I know my God had a plan for me as far as seeing to that I made it here, you know, and to be able to share where I'm at. Like I said, I lived in a problem for so long. Prior to last week, I really lived in a problem. In recovery, sometimes we forget what the solution is, you know. And my sponsor, he's kind of laid back, and he just usually makes suggestions, and he make me come up with the solutions to the problems that I'm having. And my grand sponsor, he was the one that really made me take a look, because he had a week of vacation, and he said, "We gonna do this week." I said, "What we gonna do?" He said, "We're gonna start to deal with some of those problems you got." I said, oh yeah? How we gonna do this? We started all over. Step 1, You know, after I got done doing that, I realized that my solutions was in the steps and the traditions of Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I tried to complicate this before I got here. Living in the solution. Hey, if I've been clean for 2 years and 10 months, I've been living in the solution. You know what I mean? And the only way I did that was to work the steps of Narcotics Anonymous, take suggestions from the people in my family in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, because this is my family today, see? You know. I have to love a lot of people today from a distance. You know, my immediate family. And this is the only family that I have that I can really say I trust in these rooms. You know? Outside sometimes I'm a little leery, but in these rooms I can trust you. Because that's where I'm at today. You know? I gave you something I never gave anybody. And that's respect. Each and every one of us in this room is a miracle, see? I believe that. I know that. We may have came down different paths, but we all here for the same reason, see? I know that. And then it's like, I had this urgency to say that if I can recover, anybody can recover. Before I came, the old timers that was here, they recovered. And just listening to them, and I used to say, I ain't that bad. You know what I mean? See, if they can do it, I can do it. And it's like a domino effect, y'all. That's why we continue to come here and stay here and live in the solution of staying clean. One day at a time. Sometimes minute by minute, second by second for me. But I know one thing. Meeting makers make it. You know? I still go to 5 to 6 meetings a week. See, before, when I used to get clean, I used to implicate my own program into the program of Narcotics Anonymous. And I go back out and use. And I didn't understand why. You know what I mean? I didn't understand why. See, today I don't play with that anymore. I think I put enough quarters in that machine, you know, to say that I earned my seat in here. You know, I ain't got to go back out and use as long as I follow suggestions and do the necessary footwork, which is picking up a pencil, picking up the basic text, and write. Now, I ain't gonna tell you I'm a right guru, because I ain't. But if the pain get bad enough, I know what to do. I got solutions to my problems today. And if you don't have them, you better try to find out what they are. And they're simple. That's the bad part about it. It's a simple program for complicated people. I definitely qualify for that, y'all. Like I said, it took my grand sponsor to see something in me to make me sit down and write and share where I was at in order to get through the things that was going on in my life. And yeah, the only thing I can really admit is I caused my own turmoil in my life. And it's a simple solution to it. It's simple. But sometimes we ain't ready for that. You know, we are our eyes and ears around here. And sometimes other people see us better than we see ourselves. So I'm really grateful for this fellowship, to be able to have that network of people in my life who can check me when I need to be checked. You know, I'm okay with that. I might not like it when you say it to me. You know what I mean? I don't know nobody who likes when you say it to me. But you know, I got an open mind today to be able to accept what they say to me. Because I know they're saying it in a loving and caring way. You know? And therefore, I can get through those problems that I have today. You know? I wanted to share one of the key things, you know, about my problems when I was coming through this process of recovery. And that was the fact that I had made some goals when I had got out of treatment. And I procrastinated about those goals for a long time. You know, we good procrastinators, see. We like to put things on the back burner, you know. As a direct result of that, I just started school, you know. College. It's a big difference. College. You know, I never would have thought, you know, 2 years and 10 months ago that I would be in college today. I was like John. I thought I was a defeated addict. I thought I was going to be a junkie for the rest of my life. See, you done gave me something that I never thought I could attain. And that's a right to live and to be a productive member of society again through the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. Anything is attainable as long as you work the process of recovery in your life. And can't nobody tell me nothing different. Can't nobody tell me nothing different about that. It's been proven to me. See, other addicts who done walked this walk before I got here showed me that it could be done. And you know what? I put my faith in them when I came here. You know? I put my faith in them people. And they got me to where I'm at today with the help of my higher power. They gave me a chance to live. You know, the court systems, my family, and a numerous amount of other people didn't have that kind of belief in me. And you people did, see. So I owe you. You know what I owe you? I owe you to carry the message to the newcomer and the still suffering addicts. I'm truly grateful for being here today. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here for me today, because you are here for me. You get to hear me share. And see, that's what we're here for, to carry the message. I'm truly a grateful recovering addict, and my name is Michael. Thank you.
I'd like to thank John and Michael for being here, and before I open up the floor for sharing, I need to remind everyone that we're being taped. If you do not wish to be taped, please let me know so that we can turn off the machine off.
Don't everybody run at once.
I'm Eric, man. I know I could really relate to what they're saying about living in the solution. My whole life, living in the problem was just getting up, using, and the only solution I ever thought about was, how to get the drugs and how to go about getting the drugs, and then just waking up the next day and living in the problem again, every day. And today, I don't have problems, I have issues in my life. I even classify them differently, because when I wake up today, I'm not bold. I don't have to run to the methadone clinic anymore. And I ain't got to dodge people. I ain't got to look outside my window, make sure nobody's waiting for me. I ain't got to do none of that. See, and that's a big freedom. So when I have issues in my life, I think of my problems that I had, and I get gratitude just like that instantly, and when I hear people coming to tables and sharing about all these problems and shit going on in their life, and they're clean, I always pull them after a meeting and say, wait a minute, where'd you come from? And what did you do the last day you used? Because I remember my last day I used, and I share this with people every time there's a newcomer. I tell them in 1991, on September 3rd, 8 o'clock in the morning, I was in my station wagon outside my own home, and I was sleeping, and I had woken up, and my daughter was just going out to school for her first time, and I wanted to lift my head up and say goodbye to her and good luck. I couldn't even do that because of the shame and because of the hopelessness I felt, and because I just felt so alone, and but I had so much, I had this little girl, and that's when I had my so-called spiritual awakening, and I just broke down, and she went on to school, didn't know I was in that station wagon, and I went and put myself in a hospital, and now that had been like, I was still living in the problem. That was my fourth hospital, and I knew that, but something was different this time. Something was different, and I did find the program a year before that, and it took me that long to come back. So something stuck in my head. The minute minute I find myself in a solution one time, I seem to be able to get back into the solution a little easier. You know, so when you keep coming around here and then you go back out and relapse, you still have a part of this program in you, no matter what you think, you know. And that's what happened to me. The program's just a little bit of it stuck in me to where I could go, you know, go back with my head up high and not care about, you know, that relapse. And the cool thing was nobody else cared either. I'm not unique, you know, is what it all comes down to. And living in this here and now kind of goes hand in hand with that solution thing for me. Because all I can do is what I can do today. And none I can do tomorrow, nothing I can do about my past. You know, so living in the solution is living in the here and now for me, and going to meetings and listening to some solutions. Sometimes I can go and listen to solutions and to problems or issues of my life that haven't even happened yet. But because I go to so many meetings, because I want to live life on life's terms, I want to hear solutions that, you know, don't even have nothing to do with me yet. See, I use the program as a yet because, you know, I used it for so many times out there using. I used all those yets, and I compared people to living in dumpsters saying, well, I haven't yet done that. You know, so I turn things around today, you know. Programs give me a lot too. I mean, I used to wake up thinking crooked, you know, and I don't have to do that today.
That's right.
I wake up reading the, you know, just for today. You know, today is about God's will, you know, for us. And as long as I don't get in the way, I'm okay. As long as I don't put all these high expectations on others and myself, I'm okay. That's living in a solution. It's staying out of the way, you know, and not letting me think that I'm the one that has all these answers. Because I don't have no answers. You people do, and sometimes people don't even realize they have the answers for you, you know. And that's, you know, the biggest thing I've been trying to do lately is just listen to answers, and because I've always, that one of my character defects was not being able to listen or take suggestions, you know. And I've been doing that the last year, and it's been working, you know. And go figure. I don't know. You know, they told me that when I first come around, you know, that this is the solution. You know, all you got to do is not use, go to meetings, don't use in between the meetings, do 90 and 90, live in the here and now, this will pass too, God only gives you what you can handle, God don't wear no watch, just, you know, the list goes on, you know, and someone had just told me that God don't wear no watch the other day, and I was laughing because I want what I want. You know, when I have issues in my life, I want them issues to be gone. And someone, you had said something about procrastination. That's one of my cores, my disease, is not just the self-centeredness, but the procrastination that leads up to all my issues. Eric's the one that causes all this stuff, you know. I no longer blame people, places, and situations for Eric today. You know, I've been holding myself accountable today for things that I've done in my past too, which has taken me quite a while to start making amends, you know, financial amends. I just, you know, the program, you say you're just going back to school, and I went back, you know, and I finally got my degree, and I'm finally just got hired as an engineer, and you know, I was the kind of kid that I always chased the gangsters. I wanted to be a gangster, you know, and a big drug dealer, and that's all I ever did. But I never was a big drug dealer. I was just a big dope fiend, you know. And because I couldn't even do that successful. You know, I used up all my profits and never could even do that successful. So for me to go back to school get an education, and then get a job where they're redesigning my office for me, is like, see, I get that low self-esteem shit and this addiction that starts clicking in my head saying, you don't deserve none of this shit. For all the shit you've done, you don't deserve none of that. And today I know that is not where I'm going. I'm not even going to listen to that type of shit no more. Because there ain't one person in here that can do whatever you want to do if you let God help you do that, you know. And I know that today. And I have faith in God today that whatever I want to do, I can do, as long as I have faith. And, you know, and I believe God works through you people. You know, it wasn't Eric patting myself on the back saying, go to that next class, do that next semester. It was you people. Come on, you know, it'd be times where I'm saying, man, I can't pass this, I can't do this. People are saying, yeah, right. You know, you did the last one, you're going to do this one. You know, they give you that boost, you know, that self-esteem that I could not give myself. You know, and that was a hard point in my life where I could not accept that I could be successful. You know, and today's reading is about success and failure. You know, I related to it because I'm scared to death of where I'm going. But that's lack of faith. I'm not living in the here and now. You know, what I have right now is I'm at a meeting with a bunch of people I love and that probably could love me, and that's all that matters. You know, what more do I need to worry about? I don't know, I haven't had a bad day in years. You know, and I've had an hour here and there, but nothing to even complain about. You know, because when I complain, I know I'm complaining about God's work. And I just, you know, all this stuff is in that book that we call basic text. You know, the instructions of life. You know, and there's just other things where you can just pick up on and learn how to live on life's terms, you know. And I'm that person that goes out and sucks all that up like a sponge. Because I sure took a lot of effort to go out and use, you know, and I spent a lot of hours using and a lot of hours trying to find money for that dope. So for me to give up a couple hours a day ain't nothing. You know, I have to think like that today because I do get complacent. And I some days I don't want to do nothing in recovery. I get sick of it. But I know those are the days I'm going to do it anyway. Because my sick ass tells me to do it. You know. I don't know. I've just been really grateful to be fortunate enough to come into this program. You know. It was like the last place on the block for me. I ran out of all those other options. And once I came here, it opened up a whole bunch more options. You know, somebody told me that once you create options, you'll never be depressed again. And I never understood what they're talking about until, you know, recently, this past year. I have not been depressed because I always have a plan A and a plan B. You know, I don't put myself in a corner no more and get trapped. You know, it's cool. And I learned that through people. But, I don't know, just thanks for being here.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
My name's Rick and I'm an addict.
Hey, Rick.
I choose to give praise to my higher power, who I choose to call God, and the people of this family, Narcotics Anonymous. For me, it's the only thing that works. 24 years of using, it's the only thing I've ever found in my life that helps me to stop this drug abuse and addiction. I can't do it any other way. I've fallen out all the treatment centers. I went at half-hearted. You know, I've learned to experience that half steps really do avail you nothing. You have to go into it with your heart and really believe and want it. I've got a sponsor for the first time in my life that has enough faith in me to sponsor me. The disease in me was preventing me from having to answer to somebody else. How are you doing today, Rick? Honestly, I feel like shit, and why? And being able to share that with somebody. He has brought up the words unconditional love. I'm starting to see what that is. People being willing to share their experience, strength, and hope. And it gives me strength to see people that can make it and how they're doing it. And I'm very young in recovery, and it's starting to show me that there is hope. As long as I don't use and listen to the suggestions in the books, what these people tell me, it can be done. And I just want to thank you all to be here.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, Rick. Love you, man.
Hi, I'm a recovering addict by the name of Dawn.
Hey,
Dawn.
We're talking about living in the solution. We talk about putting procrastination and putting things up on the back burner. Forget the burner. I stuck it in a box and stuck it as far up in the closet, way back, beyond anything, so that I didn't have to look at that stuff. Didn't matter how much light was in the closet. But you know what? Working these 12 steps, that damn closet shelf broke. And it all came tumbling right down in my face. And it says, ta-da, deal with me now. Well, the basic way that I deal today is through the usage of the 12 steps and 12 traditions. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't know until we get into service work or we break a tradition that's not, that we really broke a tradition, that we broke a tradition. And essentially, that's how I've gone my whole life. I didn't know I'd done something wrong until I'd done it. And then I get this as a kid. Well, you should have known better. Duh. No, I love being smacked around, Of course I didn't know better, or I would have done better. I wouldn't have done that. So living in the solution for me today, as I tell my sponsees, and I have 7 of them, and believe me, if you don't want your inventory taken, don't get sponsees, because they will take your inventory in a hot second. But I'm all for that. I'm all for that. I want people to take my inventory, because believe me, I'm going to take yours. Because by watching you guys, I can tell what I do want and what I don't want, where I want to be and where I don't want to be. And for me, looking at somebody's life and watching them is living in a solution, because it gives me the information that I need to take in and assimilate. And sometimes this computer between my ears just says reject, 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 So I go the other way. And unfortunately, when it comes to change, say I don't have problems today. I heard somebody say they didn't have problems today. I don't know. I believe that everything I do today is a learning experience, and I learn through change. And as I go through those changes, I feel like I'm going to die. Still, I feel like I'm going to die. I'm scared to death I will. I was never afraid of death when I was using and before I came into the program. Didn't bother me in the least. The real reason I picked up the drug was because I hated myself. I couldn't stand myself. I didn't like anything about me. And I got that by watching my peers because they didn't like me. And it was, you should have known better. And so what do I do today when somebody says you should know better? Instead of swallowing and turning around in shame, because shame and guilt are two major issues. I have shame for who I am and guilt for what I do. I'm not ashamed of me anymore. To be ashamed of myself would be ashamed of who I am. And I'm not ashamed of that anymore. I was ashamed because I was the whore out on the corner. But I don't have to live like that anymore. And, you know, I stay clean. I just came through or am on the end recesses of an learning experience. And I had a problem dealing with some personalities. I say I had a problem dealing with people because it was their personality, because this particular personality quirk could be out there in several people, the same quirk. And I have used the excuse, well, there's more than one meeting down. There's more than one meeting here, and there's more than one meeting there. And I've been really sick this winter. I'm working on the upside of bronchial pneumonia now. So I'm telling you this because I'm telling you that I got through this stuff without picking up a drug. I can do it today without picking up the drug. I'm not saying I don't use, because I will use my sponsor in a hot second. And I will use my sponsees. And I ask them please to use me. Because when they don't use me, they're not living in the solution, and they're not allowing me to live in the solution. Because I need them just as much as they need me. I'm really grateful to be here. I came to the first one here, and I wasn't able to make it last year because at 51 years of age, I finally got my high school diploma. And yes, I have to take credit for some of that because I did the footwork. But I graduated last July with 2 degrees. And now I'm back in college again, and I'm working on whatever it is, I'm working on it, you know. And a lot of times I find that I go to class, they say, well, why are you doing this, Dawn? I said, because I need to keep learning. That to me is living in the solution. If I keep learning, I keep my mind open, and if somebody could throw something my way, I grab those tidbits and try to apply them in my life. My life's great. My life is absolutely fabulous. But there are moments when I don't think it is. I appreciate everyone being here. And I'm really grateful that I could be here again. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Dawn. I'm an addict named Connie. And I've got 3 days clean, and if I make it through today. And I'm trying to get back into the solution.
and it's hard coming back. And that's all I've got.
Anybody else care to share? Got time for one more. You read it?
Hi everybody, I'm an addict. My name is Phil.
Bill?
And I think it's been a short time since I've been living in the solution. I think it was about 3 months ago that my sponsor told me it was time to start doing some of the things that I was talking about. You know, because I felt like after about 6 months in this program, I'd learned and knew a lot of the answers to the things that I was searching for. And it was just a matter of applying them, getting off my butt and doing it. Because I tossed around words like faith and acceptance and responsibility and being productive, and inside still felt the same way and was doing a lot of the same shit. And it came a point where it was either do some of these things or die. And it was pretty blunt, And so I've been taking some of these things that I've learned and finding that, what we talked about earlier in that workshop of having some help walking through that fear, because that's what paralyzed me from not being able to do some of the things that I wanted to do, whether it be fear of failure or fear of actually succeeding. It didn't matter. It was fear. But it comes down to it for me when the fear of dying gets worse than the fear of living. I suppose I'll do some living, and that's pretty much the way it's been for me. But I'm still here. And it's been getting, the length of time, the process I go through has been getting shorter and a little less painful. The letting go process of some of those old ways and old behaviors. All my expectations that I had when I first got here have pretty much been shot to hell. And I'm glad. Because, I don't really know what I expected. I guess I just expected to put the drugs down and life would be alright. And, maybe I expect this program, this fellowship to do for me what the drugs did, but guilt-free. But, I can say today that I did live in the solution, because I find myself just a little little minor changes in my attitude and the way I carry myself that tells me I've made a change. You know, when a problem arises today, instead of asking why, I ask what. You know, not why is this happening, but what can I do about it? And if I don't have the answers, which most of the time I don't, who can I ask? You know. Huh. You know, it's. I don't know. I was sitting, you know, over there and feeling rather overwhelmed by everybody's honesty. And this is my second convention ever. You know, my first one was the state convention, and I left there, you know, different person. You know, like somebody was saying earlier, you know, you leave this place with a piece of you, you know, or you bring a piece of this place when you leave, and I got a whole new perspective, you know, of what we're trying to do here, and that's simply living life without the use of drugs, because I know today I'm living, you know. Life may not always meet my expectations, but I suppose that'll be okay. And you know, I'm grateful for you people that not just tell me how to live, but show me how to live. Because I'm a person that needs visual aids. You know, I don't hear too well. I need to see it in order to believe it. Sometimes that's few and far in between. So, you know, I'm glad to be here, and this is a hell of a serene place. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Bill. I'd like to thank everybody for sharing. Would you please help me close this workshop with a group hug and a serenity prayer?
Circle representative, we never have to be alone. Who's in control?
God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming today.
All right, coming back. All right.